Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to The Jewish Lens. I'm your host, Jonathan Rosen, and today I am thrilled to welcome the king of Jewish baseball, the CEO of Israel Baseball America, the manager of the Israel national team. He's also coached with the Dodgers, Red Sox, and managed the incredibly fun Savannah Bananas. He's an author and artist who's had his work exhibited. Please help me welcome Nate Fish. Nate, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome. Love the logo in the background.
Yes, I enjoy it too. Well, reading everything about you is fascinating, and we have a lot to cover. But to start with, I saw that you were born in New Hampshire, but grew up in Ohio. So let me start by asking, what kind of Jewish life did you have growing up, your own family and community-wise?
That's funny. It's a good question and a good place to start. Originally Vermont, right? And then New Hampshire. So just jumped from one side of the Connecticut River to the other. So my mom's from Boston. My dad's from New York City. So sort of
place.
our archetypal second generation Jewish Americans who sort of stepped off that path of the New York Jew and the Boston Jew and moved to Vermont where they met. So I like to say we were Jewish hippies living in the mountains. So not a huge community aspect to our Jewish education and upbringing, but very, very Jewish within the household. Just sort of, Jewish stuff everywhere. The paintings were of Jewish themes and the books and we did Shabbat on Friday nights, had our own form of kosher, just no pork, no shellfish. Studied together on Saturdays. My mom was very, very, and still is very into Judaism and also interfaith dialogue and all that stuff. Wanted to be a rabbi. Couldn't be ordained by the Reform movement in the 70s when she was studying, because as a woman, but sort of redirected some of that intensity and energy just to our own household and our own family. So within our home, a lot of Jewish themes, Jewish education, just Jewish pride. Eventually sort of joined civilization when we moved to Cleveland and for the first time had access to a Jewish community and lots of other communities. It was sort of this Shaker Heights where we moved was this incredible multicultural place, but there was a significant Jewish community, and my mom worked for the Jewish Federation of Cleveland there, and then was the executive director of all of the Hillels in Northeastern Ohio, headquartered at Case Western University. So her career was in Jewish communal services.
Oh, it's funny to me that you got more observant, I guess, in Ohio than Boston, just thinking about it,
Yeah. So anyways, there's a thread though within our family of sort of Jewish communal services and the Jewish nonprofit world that I've sort of stepped into now with Israel Baseball Americas. Yeah.
And well, what good thing to segue in, at what age did you start getting involved in baseball, and was your family very into it as well?
My dad was this dates him. He was born in 1937 in the Bronx, but was a New York Giants fan before they moved to the West Coast. He lived, relatively close to Yankee Stadium, played stickball in the streets and all that sort of nostalgic New York stuff. But yeah, sort of average American interest and fan of baseball. I sort of took it to a different level for our family. My own interest in baseball predates memory. So, had a bat and a ball and was always swinging and throwing and running around with a helmet on or whatever. Even at very young, 2 years old or something. I have a few vague memories of T-ball and Little League. And then it really, I played a lot of basketball growing up too, but when we moved to Cleveland when I was 12 years old, I realized I wasn't going to go to the NBA and sort of focused almost entirely on baseball after that. So I'd say, that was a critical point where I started taking baseball more seriously.
So you grew up like Red Sox fan, or like you Reds or Indians?
Yeah. Red Sox initially. So yeah, my dad had shifted his allegiances from we were in New England for so long, and the Giants had moved anyway. So anyways, he became a Red Sox fan over the years and sort of indoctrinated us as Red Sox fan. First game was at Fenway.
Awesome.
Amazing experience. Yeah, that was really an important moment for me too, to see, a big league game and sort of realize this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Well, just curious, who were some of your favorite players growing up?
Yeah, those 80s, late 80s Red Sox teams, Wade Boggs was,
Mhm.
not a comp for me as a player, as a left-handed hitter, and a
Uh,
sort of but played third base, which I also played and ended up playing. Yeah, those classic, Clements was on those teams.
uh,
Dwight Evans. What was his name? The guy that played left field from
was
Florida.
Greenwell. There was also
Yeah, Mike
yeah,
Greenwell. And then Jim Rice towards the end
right,
of
yeah.
his career. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you first start realizing, I guess, that you were pretty good at playing?
Um, I was always sort of, slightly better than average athlete in general,
Mhm.
whatever it was, basketball, football, baseball. Um, but when I was 15, I made a 16 and under travel team, like an
Okay.
all-star team from Northeastern Ohio. That was really good, and I wasn't expecting to make it. Sort of the last guy to make the team, I think. But to make that team as a 15-year-old and then roll that into my high school career, and I had a good sophomore year of high school. So now, I was sort of on people's radar a little bit, and realized I had a good chance of playing decent college baseball, at least, if not professional baseball.
Well, when you were younger, I saw that you were in the Maccabi games, and so which you won a gold medal. I read. So what was that process like of making the team, and what was your experience doing it?
Yeah, so I was it was actually after college. So I had
Was
already
okay.
had my college career,
Gotcha. Okay.
wasn't playing anymore. And then that's sort of how I got back onto the field and playing. I got a phone call from the men's fast pitch softball team for the Maccabee games. And that sort of reignited what ended up turning into another, almost 15 years of playing. So did that a couple times, ended
But they
up
just called you out of the blue.
yeah, there's this thing called the Jewish All-American list that gets
Okay.
published every year.
Mhm.
They just sort of I had found my name on that list, and we're calling guys from the list. Um, so I played in the MAC games a few times. Ended up in 2013. I managed the juniors boys baseball team.
Right.
Um, Dean Kramer was on that team as a young amateur. Now he's obviously a big leaguer.
Mhm.
Um, so I've coached and played in the MAC games a number of times. Yeah.
So from everything I've read about you, so you, like you just mentioned, you were a star player growing up, but you were never drafted. So and here's to me what the funny thing is, people don't realize. I played with several guys who had been minor leaguers, and they were like they were two even made it to AAA. They were the best players I've ever played, the best I've ever seen. And it was mind-boggling to think that they didn't make it. So that and just the talent level, I guess, between the majors and minors. So I got to say that you know, they didn't make it. How difficult is it to reach that level? And so this had been, your dream to have it hit you at that time. Did you think that was it for you at baseball at that moment?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll answer the first part of the question first. It's hard.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's lots of I'm coaching summer college baseball right now and sort of seeing where these guys are at. And my recent experience is more on the professional side. So I'm sort of now
Mhm.
going back a little bit and comparing the college guys to the pro guys that I've gotten used to working with. But it's very hard. You have to be supremely talented, and that's not even close to a guarantee.
Right.
So, it's a very fragile thing. Baseball development's sort of weird and nonlinear. Sometimes guys that were not the best end up developing late, taking sort of a quantum leap forward developmentally, figuring something out. Dean was like that. He was not a big prospect, and
Mhm.
now he's a big leaguer. And some of the most talented guys, maybe get a shot, maybe don't, but injury, the mentality and the mental component of riding the wave of a baseball career is a big part. It's a pretty fragile thing, and to make it all the way to the promised land, so to speak, to the big leagues, is statistically very rare and difficult thing to do. Yeah. As far as my own career, not getting drafted, yeah, that's a hugely impactful moment. Every moment of my life leading up to that point had been basically purely focused on advancing into professional baseball. Don't get a shot, you get sort of cast out into the world of I think in college we called it NARPs, non-athletic regular people. Got to get a job and this and figure it out. You've just been sort of taken along in life up until that point. But everyone has to kind of get off the train at some point, even the guys that make it to the big leagues. And so, yeah, that transition is very, very hard. And there's organizations out there that are devoted completely to helping athletes make that transition, because it's everything. It's your entire identity. And every time you're with family or friends, all people say, hey, how's baseball going? It's everything. It's your whole world up until that moment, and then it sort of gets shattered. I've been lucky to stay in the game and sort of have this winding journey, largely based on my involvement with Israel baseball. But I don't feel sort of cheated out of any opportunities. I feel really grateful that I've had my own journey, and I ended up playing till I was 37 years old, and sort of didn't let that moment dictate the end, so to speak.
Was it tough for you to because the amazing thing to me is that you persevered. I mean, even after not getting drafted, was it tough for you? Was there that moment, should I keep pursuing this?
Yeah, so I started coaching because I sort of wasn't qualified to do anything else, and a way to make a living and stay in the game. And I was just hitting a lot and training a lot. I was sort of going about my days as if I was playing still.
Right.
And training and learning and working on stuff, but no, I had no contract or no team or anything. I was just a sort of habit. And I did that for a while. So it wasn't even a conscious thing. Should I keep trying or not? I just sort of automatically kept training because I'd been doing it for so long. And I don't know. Yeah, maybe subconsciously I kind of knew it wasn't the end of the road. And so I just sort of kept training, even though there was no apparent path back into the game.
It's amazing. So one of the fascinating things to me, and just personal experiences, I lived in Israel as a kid for a couple of years, between the ages of 11 and 13. And when I was there, I would have given anything for there to be a baseball league. There was just nothing around. So how did it happen that Israel came to have baseball leagues, I guess, to begin with, in a baseball program? And also, how did you first become involved in it?
Yeah, good questions. So the Israel Association of Baseball is the governing body for baseball in Israel, and has been since 1986 when they were formed. It was just a group of parents with, sort of kids that were on the fence, sort of Israeli American kids. They would go spend some time in the States in the summer, go to a baseball game, fall in love with the game, like I'm sure you did and I did. Go back to Israel and sort of nag their parents, hey, I want to play baseball, I want to play baseball. And at some point there was sort of a critical mass of kids like that, and so they were like, let's make a baseball team. But there's no other kids in the country to play, so the only option to play in a real baseball game is to start a national team and go compete against other national teams. But to do that, you have to have a sort of proper organization. So they formed the IAB, sent a team, I think it was a 12 and under national team, to Germany for a tournament. No idea what they were doing, and no uniforms or anything, just kind of went out there to play. Ended up losing their first game ever 54-0 to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, wow.
The Saudi team is a bunch of US Army kids living in Saudi Arabia. That's why they were so good, not because Saudi Arabia is so good at baseball. And that sort of kicked it off. I mean, less than humble beginnings. Go back to Israel, no real plan, but a few more kids keep emerging, mostly through that band of towns in the center of the country: Ra'anana, Tel Aviv, Modi'in, Beit Shemesh, Jerusalem. And, slowly over the years, they form a little league. So each of these towns has a little club, and, a couple dozen kids playing at U12 and U14 and U16. And it just goes on that way for about 20 years, parents volunteering their time, to sit on the board of directors for the IAB or coach a local team, excuse me, whatever needed to be done. It went on that way until 2007, so 20 years basically.
Wow.
And this crazy guy, Larry Barris from Boston, decides he wants to start a professional baseball league in Israel. I think a lot of people make this connection. They think, oh, American Jews love baseball. Israelis must love baseball too. They just don't. They just don't know that they love it yet, and they kind of underestimate how different American Jews and Israelis actually are, and how different their interests are. So he did it, and that sort of took baseball in Israel to a different level. That was my introduction. I played in that league. I played for Tel Aviv, the Tel Aviv Lightning.
Mhm.
But the league failed after 1 year. I mean, it went bankrupt. Larry was, in bad financial trouble, no fans, no facilities, nothing that could really support a professional baseball league. But to his credit, and we didn't know it at the time, it sort of set this chain of events into motion. Me and several other people that are still involved.
Mhm.
That was our introduction to Israel baseball.
Had you been to Israel prior to that or no?
I had been to Israel twice before that. That was 2007. Yeah. So that was my personal introduction. And like I said, that was 15 years ago, and I'm still involved with the national team, managing the national
Nice.
team. And so, yeah.
Well, you've been involved in now several World Baseball Classics as well as the Olympics. So to start, like for someone who hadn't been drafted, what's going through your mind? And all of a sudden now you're teammates with like guys like Kevin Youkilis. I know you played with him in college, and then Brad Ausmus and Ian Kinsler. So what's that like now? All of a sudden you're with these major leaguers like on the same team.
Yeah, like I was saying before, I was just really lucky to sort of stay involved with Israel baseball. So the season in 2007, and then I would fly back and help with the national team and stuff. And the next big leap for Israel baseball was in 2012. We got invited to qualify for the World Baseball Classic. And because I had been involved for a few years at that point, I got an invite down to camp. So I sort of walked into a big league clubhouse for the first time at 32 years old. Like you said, now all of a sudden, Jock Peterson's playing out. I mean, he was only 20 years old at the time. He was sort of a rising prospect. Sean Green had just retired. Gabe Kapler was on the coaching staff. Brad Ausmus was managing the team. Clearly a different pedigree for me, and that really opened the door to then me shifting gears into saying, okay, I want to do this. I like this environment. I want to work in professional baseball. I know a lot of people now in professional baseball, and I can lean on them to learn and to try and connect the dots a little bit to get opportunities. It was many years even after that until I was actually hired by the Dodgers and got my first job in pro baseball. But that really for Israel baseball was a landmark, and for me personally also, to get more exposure to professional baseball, what that environment is like, and just learn from those guys.
Well, before we get to the specific tournaments, that like you mentioned, what's that atmosphere like in the World Baseball Classic? Just as a spectator, it looks like insane. So, and what's it like in general, and getting to represent your country? Israel being Israel there.
Yeah, so it's gotten crazier. It wasn't
Yes.
insane at when the tournament started. I think it was 2006 was the first World Baseball Classic, and it was not a big tournament. By 2023, when we were playing in Miami, it was just nuts. I mean, the stadium was shaking. It was so loud inside. But it's not unique to Team Israel. I think all national teams have a special chemistry. I would say we have even an added layer. I mean, for most of us, you grow up, you're the only Jewish guy on whatever team. I was lucky to have Euclid in college, and it was like, oh my God, there's two Jewish guys on this team. That's sort of the most that you could ever expect. Usually, you're the only Jewish guy. So in 2012, that was the first time we had really stepped into an atmosphere where the whole team is Jewish. And it's there's almost always with our national teams, there's special chemistry and commonality, and just a level of comfort that is really special. For some of the guys, they have very strong Jewish identities, and they've been to Israel many times. For some of the guys, it's the beginning of this journey where they're learning about their Jewishness, and for guys that make Aliyah, it's a whole new phase of their life where they're learning about Israel and what it means to be an Israeli citizen and stuff like that. So it's just, the conversations are a little bit different. The vibe is a little bit different. But there's a level of connection and commonality that you just do not have on any regular baseball team.
I would definitely think that. So yeah, back to the World Baseball, so in 2013, you lost to Spain in the final round to qualify. So I read that you felt that you should have won, that you had a more talented team. So what was that the prevailing feeling in the clubhouse afterwards?
Yeah.
That
It was bad. It was an absolute funeral in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Brad came in and said, "There's nothing to hang your heads about," but we knew we were the best team there, and Glenn Copeland, our team doctor, before the opening game of the tournament, had made a speech. Jews everywhere rooting for you, and it was this really moving and true speech. And so we were sort of carrying this burden of representation through the games, and really expecting, oh, we're going to win this thing. We're the best team. We just have to go out and just sort of execute, and we don't have to even overachieve. If we just are who we are, we're the best team here. We should win it. And it's going to be this huge celebration. And I think that's what we were all expecting. And then we walked away. Yeah, pretty disappointing, not knowing if we would ever be invited back to try to qualify for the tournament again. Now it's like there's this great sort of redemption story in 2017. But at the time, you're like, what do we do now? This happens a lot in baseball. You're just like, what? You don't know what's next. The season ends, you pack your bag, and you're like, don't have a job, go home, figure it out. It basically happens every year for most baseball players. So at that point, Israel baseball had been bad, historically for 20 years. We had the failed pro league, and now we had lost in the biggest tournament that we'd ever been a part of. So it was not an impressive track record up until.
Did you think that was it? That at the end of that? But...
Yeah. I didn't think. I didn't know. We knew we were disappointed. Even if we were going to get invited again, it was 4 years later. It just feels like a really long time.
Right.
You're just like, even if we do get invited, it's forever away, and it ends up going pretty quickly. But at the time, it just doesn't feel like you're ever going to get there again.
Well, let's talk about the 2017. It was the opposite thing. You said you were the favorites in 2013. At 2017, you went on that miraculous run, being Korea, China, the Netherlands, and Cuba before falling. I was like riveted to those games. What was the feeling like for all of you as you kept on knocking off those higher ranked teams?
Well, after we won 4 games in a row, we thought we were going to win the whole tournament. The feeling eventually when you start rolling like that is you just can't lose. It wasn't true. We ended up coming up against Japan in the Tokyo Dome, and that's tough. But the more we won, the more we believed. We knew that a lot of fans were sort of getting on the story and rooting for us, which was really cool. But even before the game started, we had a pretty good sense of belief. Jerry Weinstein managed the team that year, and really we prepared well. We had mini camp before, long coaches meetings, lots of advanced scouting reports, and through that process, the coaching staff started to believe, we may be ranked whatever it was, somewhere in the 30s or 40s, and Korea might be ranked 4th or whatever. I think it was actually 3rd in the world. And we're opening up against them. But through the process of studying that Jerry had us going through, we started to believe we were better than people thought, and they weren't as good as people thought. And we liked the matchups, and we had a game plan. And the team, we really went into those games believing that we were going to win them, and we did. It was pretty cool.
It was awesome. As a fan, I was ecstatic, and I also remember how down I was when you eventually lost, but proud at the same time. I watched the documentary, Heading Home, the tale of Team Israel, which I thought was such a well-made documentary. One of the things that hit because of how true it was, and you just kind of mentioned it, for me, like whenever there's a Jewish player, I root for them. Not necessarily when they're playing against the Mets, but, I root for them at all other times. But is there an extra sense, and you said it a little bit, of pressure and motivation that you're not just playing for each other, you're not just playing for Israel, you're playing for Jews around the world?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a little bit of a different vibe for the guys. So most of them are coming out of professional, but currently in their professional careers. They're sort of in that regular season baseball mentality, stay steady. It's not a hugely pressurized environment. But this is like, the energy is much much different for them, and so they have to shift gears a little bit into like this like tournament kind of game. Everything's game seven, and that just the sense of how meaningful the games are is just much different than what they're used to, and it's really fun for them because so much, like you're saying, so much within professional baseball, especially in the minor leagues, is about your own development. I
Yeah.
need my opportunities. I'm paying attention to my numbers. I need other people to fail for me to be promoted. And that's just how the system is set up. But in this environment, it's like we're all together. All that matters is winning. Let's figure out any way we can to get it done. And it's just a completely different feeling and mentality for them that they love. I think all the national teams love it. I know Nelly Cruz was saying about the WBC in 2023 that he would pay to play in the tournament. He enjoys it so much.
Do you get approached by all the fans, like, Jewish kids all over, like, all ecstatic?
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Yeah, the fans are incredible. Even here, I was on the field the other day, and family came up and introduced themselves and asked for an autograph. Not that my autograph's worth anything, but just cool to see that the kids, are fans, because we did, like you were saying, we didn't have it. There was no such thing as Israel baseball when I was growing up. I would have been sort of a prime candidate for it, and we didn't have anything like that to look up to. But so just to know that the kids even know who we are is really special.
I left Israel in '81, so it was a few years after I left. So that basically you said.
Right.
So I want to discuss the Olympics. How was that for all of you? On the one hand, it's such an honor representing the country at the highest stage of competition. But I was reading that you had mentioned that you were not allowed to wear your colors or display the flag outside the venue. So how much of a gut punch reminder is that you're the only country that has to follow that rule?
Yeah, that's how, I mean, unfortunately, we're pretty used to it. We have a lot of, security briefings before we travel. We travel with security. There's depending on the sort of different levels, we can't have our gear, and they give, different instructions about speaking Hebrew, not speaking Hebrew. We had to stay on an isolated floor in the Olympic Village. So we stayed on the 14th floor. Elevator only went up to the 11th. So we had to walk the last 3 flights and then go through security and wear trackers, and had retina scanners, and no one could come up. No, we were just sort of isolated. We could hang our flag for the first time since 72. So we had flags hanging on the balconies, which is in the village. So most of the countries all display their flags wherever they're staying, and we were able to do that. But it's a little isolating, you feel a little bit isolated from the rest of the Olympic community and village and experience. Because we're the only team that had to do that and stay in those conditions. Yeah.
We see how Israeli teams are treated at sporting events, and these Jew-hating individuals. So did you experience that during competitions like the Olympics or the World Baseball Classic, either from opposing fans, and I'm even more curious if you experienced it from opposing players at all?
Not players, no.
Not players.
There were some protests outside of exhibition games that we had before the Olympics.
Yeah.
There's a new documentary that's out now called Israel Swings for Gold about
I haven't seen it yet. I know
Olympics.
Right.
It's really good. It documents some of this stuff. But yeah, there were some protests. Not a huge deal, a little bit, disappointing. You're like, hey, we're a baseball team getting ready to go play in the Olympics. There's not really any other team that would have to answer for the political actions of their country, in these circumstances, except us. So mostly we just go about our business. Let's just go play baseball. You're sort of vaguely aware of it. Maybe when you're getting off the bus or a couple hours before the game, but once you get out there, it's just sort of baseball as usual. Yeah.
So you said you're now the manager of the team, as well as being heavily involved in the organization itself. what goes into searching for players for Team Israel, and what's the process like?
Yeah, good question. So in the past, it's been kind of crazy. Um, there's an organization called Jewish Baseball News. You probably know it.
Yeah.
They track all the pro guys in baseball. We've relied on their database and some of their work. Um, you know, we have scouts throughout professional baseball that help provide reports on guys. But it's just been a scramble every 4 years or whenever you have a big competition a year in advance to try and ramp up, find who's available, where are they? Let's talk to them. Let's talk to their agent. Let's talk to their teams. And so we're trying to standardize that process, have a running database, have a full-time scouting department that manages those relationships. So, in a minor league system, there's 165 guys that they're sort of tracking their development. It's probably a slightly smaller number for us. And the amount of communication that we'll have with them is not quite as intimate as what a big league team will have with each of their minor league guys. But having, managing this database of national team players and then potential national team players and managing those relationships in a continual basis. So it's not stop and start every 2 years or every 4 years. It's just this ongoing, hey, we want to know you when you're 18. We want you to play for us when you're 23 and when you're 27, and we want you to stay in the organization, and just having it be a continuum instead of stopping and starting.
When you do reach out to like professional baseball players with Jewish heritage now, are they mostly receptive? Like, hey, yes, I'd be like really interested.
Yeah, everyone considers it, there's a lot of considerations with their professional careers, their health, what their teams and agents want them to do. But yeah, everyone hears us out basically, and then sort of weighs all of these different considerations and then makes a decision on whether they can do it or not.
Well, you're now set up in the U.S. You're the CEO of Israel Baseball America. What things are being done now in order to get more Jewish kids involved with the sport, as well as have an interest in becoming involved with Israel baseball?
Yeah, so we're sort of setting up this funnel for kids to get in the program super young. Not that this is so relevant for national teams, because it would be such a long process, but
Right.
Camps and stuff for kids to feel like they're part of this Israel baseball community. Kids as young as 4 and 5 years old, just doing day camps and baseball clinics, and then up into eventually competing for travel teams that are sort of within the Israel baseball ecosystem. And then as they get older, showcases for high school players. That's when we really get on our radar and say, okay, we're going to follow this guy. And we add those kids to our database. So
you're really watching all over the country to see.
Yeah, we're doing programming everywhere that you would expect. So all these camps and clinics and teams and showcases are happening in 9 or so regions and locations. Miami, New York, Boston, Chicago, Houston,
Right.
Southern California, Northern California, Toronto. And so we have programming for all of these different age groups and all of these regions to build up this, the base of this pyramid, and then all the way up to the national teams eventually. And we have fantasy camp also for the old guys.
I was going to ask about that in a little. Yeah, I would ask about that too.
So that's a super cool program. They kind of get the WBC experience, and see what it's like to play for the team for a week. Set up in the big league clubhouse with all the gear and on the big league field.
And you have a lot of the professional baseball players involved in that too.
Yeah, we have a bunch of our alumni as staff. So yeah, you and Ian and just a lot of guys that have played for us in the past.
So I mentioned before how amazing it is for me, to think about how when I lived in Israel, there was, nothing. And now there are leagues and teams. From what you see, have Israelis taken to baseball much at all now more, or is it still an uphill battle?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's ever going to sort of penetrate mainstream culture in Israel, but certainly the quality has gone up. So what might end up happening is that we have a really good sort of small baseball program in Israel, as opposed to popularizing baseball massively in Israel, which is a very hard thing to do anywhere. There's just, you can't control culture at that level, really. Lone Guard's playing pro ball in the States right now. First Israeli-born guy to come over to the
I was
U.S.
gonna
and
ask.
play pro ball.
Mhm.
Hit a home run and a double last night. Pretty cool. I've
I
known
saw you
Asaf
post about
since
that
he
today.
was,
Yeah.
yes, known Asaf his whole life. That's, a great sign that there can be more of that to come. And many more guys playing summer collegiate baseball in the States right now. I think we have a total of 8 Israel national team players playing in the States right now. And having nearly a 100% college placement rate for our kids that stay in the program from the time they're 18 to 21 years old, which is the military age in Israel. They're called sportai in Israel. They have
Mhm.
special sort of military exemption where they have limited military service and train and compete for the national team. So all of
That's
those
cool.
kids are going on to play college baseball. And so the quality is getting much, much better, and they're starting to have access to the resources that we have in the States.
That's great.
So I think seeing that will grow the base also, kids knowing that there's opportunities. We'll get more young players to play, but very hard to say that baseball is going to become a massively popular sport in Israel.
What do you see for it in the near term as far as long term Israeli baseball?
Yeah, I think we're concentrating on quality right now and
Okay.
standardizing all of these processes and just trying to get that stuff under control to more resemble what a professional baseball organization in the
Right.
States. Full scouting and player development departments, technology that we're using, all the stuff that pro teams do. Um, in the future, hopefully, we see more guys like Asaf. So right now, our 12U national team is almost all Sabras. The 15U
That's
national
great.
team is almost all Sabras. The 18U national team is almost all Sabras. The U23 national team is mostly Sabras with some guys that have made Aliyah. The senior national team is probably 50-50. And then the World Baseball Classic team is mostly
Right.
Americans with a couple of Sabras. So there's this inverted scale as the quality and the age go up. There's more American
Sure.
guys or American Israeli guys. And I think we'll start to see some shift in that
I hope so.
dynamic with more and more Israeli guys on the roster.
I do need to ask you about the Savannah Bananas. They just exploded in popularity here,
Yeah.
and the games look like so much fun. You were the first manager. So how did
Yeah.
you become involved? And also, how involved were you in the structure of their model? I mean, did they say to you, fans catching foul balls are going to be an out, or dances? Were you aware of all that stuff going in, or that kind of
Yeah,
evolved?
I was aware of it. I didn't have a huge impact. If they had asked me, I would have said make it all fastballs. Make any breaking pitches illegal. But which I still think is a cool rule change. But no, that's all Jesse Cole. It's his brainchild. Jesse's really, really smart, interesting person and business person and baseball person. He had dreamed this up years ago. I had coached in the Cape Cod League for 2 years. One of those 2 years, I was with Tyler Gillum, and Gillum recommended me to Jesse to go down and manage the team in 2021. The first season that they were doing banana ball, and so I went down and got to experience that. It was sort of experimental and new at the time. Like you said, it's huge. I brought my buddy Adam Virant with me from New York to be an assistant coach. Now Adam lives in Savannah. He sort of relocated, and him and Tyler coach the team together. So
Wow.
they're the
Okay.
co-coaches on the Bananas. They're all in, selling out big league stadiums,
Yeah, it's incredible.
and expanding really fast. So I may have to hit them up for a Team Israel Savannah Bananas exhibition game at some point.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about your art. So what type of do you do, and where can we find your art?
Yeah, so a lot of my creative energy has gone into Israel baseball at this point,
Mm.
designing decks and presentations and doing some writing and stuff like that. And just a lot of energy is going into the new project. I'm a writer first, I think, in the way that I think about things,
Exactly.
even visual art. So writing and publishing. I've had a bunch of blogs, but kingofjewishbaseball.com has some of the older work. And some of this sort of journey of and my journey with Israel baseball. Publishing on Medium right now. I think it's just /Nate Fish
Okay.
on medium.com. natefishart.tumblr.com for visual art.
Okay.
And that's sort of where those things are living right now. I'm not making any visual art right now. I'm just too busy and I don't have the space. I don't have a studio. We're my wife and myself and our daughter are in the Hamptons for the summer because I'm managing a team here. So I'm on the field 8 hours a day. And besides that, I'm at my desk or trying to get a little bit of family time.
Sure.
So at the desk, I think you can hear Frankie screaming in the background a little bit too.
I don't hear it at
So
all. No. It's
I'm at my desk doing Israel baseball stuff all morning, and then lunch with the family, and then I'm on the field in the afternoons.
well, as far as your writing, you have your own publishing company, what the Brick of Gold.
Yeah,
So
Brick of Gold. Yeah.
what type of books do you publish?
Yeah, so it was sort of a vanity thing. In 2016, I moved back from Israel, always had wanted to publish, was sick of getting rejections from publishing companies, and figured I could just do it myself for reasonably cheap. And so I just wanted to publish my own work, and did that. Published one of my own books, and then a friend of mine, who does work in California prisons, sent me some letters from the prisoners that he works with.
Mhm.
And I was just so moved by it. I sort of pivoted the whole company and turned it into a platform for publishing the art and writing of incarcerated people. And so I went on that separate journey of learning about them and about incarceration in America for, 4 or 5 years. We ended up publishing 8 books over the course of that time. 4 of my own. I was still sort of doing that on the sneak also, but published 4 really, really powerful books of art and writing from prisoners that I'm really proud of.
Well, going back, as we come toward the end, it's going back to, the baseball. In these times, when anti-Semitism has just exploded around the world, I think it's important to have at least, some positive things that Jews will be able to hold on to and look forward to. And, Israel baseball team, I think, is one of them. It provides a lot of joy and entertainment, So if people do want to get involved and do more to help out, to get the word, I guess, about Israel baseball, how can they go about doing it?
Yeah, just, we just went through a rebrand and just sort of got alignment on everything. So Israel Association of Baseball is still obviously in charge of the national teams and baseball development in Israel. Israel Baseball Americas is in charge of baseball development on behalf of the IAB in the US, but from the consumer side, it's just one brand. So israelbaseball.org is the home for all Israel baseball stuff, news, merchandise. For both organizations, you can sign up to play in Jerusalem or you can sign up to play in Houston, all at israelbaseball.org. And same thing with the social media accounts, just Israel Baseball across all the different platforms, one home for the brand, online and on social media.
Well, you mentioned some of your sites too. Now, how can people follow you on social media across the platforms?
Yeah, I think King of Jewish Baseball on most of them. Or maybe just even search my name, Nate Fish, and I think it pops up. There's so many different blogs and accounts and all this stuff. So
I think there are quite a few Nate Fishes on Facebook, I think.
there are, okay.
But,
Follow all of them.
So before we let you go, is there any advice that you could give kids looking to make it in baseball, or I guess anything else for that matter?
Yeah. Yeah, I really think that your own personal relationship with the game is the most important thing. Guys get caught up very easily in sort of chasing the dream, and am I going to play in high school, and am I going to play in college, am I going to play professionally, and it's very easy to lose sight that the most important thing is your own personal relationship with the game and with yourself and what it's teaching you and stuff like that. And if you concentrate on that and really have a passion for it, any number of a million different great things can happen. You might not make it to the big leagues, but there's opportunities. And so, following your personal, relationship and journey with the game is so important. And I'm sure it applies in other industries as well. Yeah.
And what's next for you?
I am where I'm supposed to be right now, I think, which is a good feeling. I'm going to work on this Israel Baseball Americas project for a long time. Hopefully, we're really just still ramping up. So there's a long ways to go. It's going to take us a few years to really get there. So, maybe managing summer collegiate baseball in the Hamptons, working on Israel baseball, managing the national team, and just maybe squeezing in a little bit of art and writing occasionally if I can. Yeah.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure. I was looking forward to this. I've been following Israel baseball, and I'm big supporter, big rooter, and good luck to you and good luck to Team Israel.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Well, again, this has been the Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and again, a very special thanks to Nate Fish. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to the Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.